Good morning.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, May 24th, in the year of our Lord 2023. Welcome. And in
Well, I think
today,
we're in the midst of the debt ceiling talks, and we talked about this in prior weeks, and now I think we're going to start to get to the front of it, where we're coming down to the wire. You're starting to see all these articles on mainstream media that stock market's going to crash 45%. It could be a Great Depression. The world's going to end if they don't make a deal. All these things are
blah.
weighing into the market, and you're
They
seeing it in
are.
the stock market, and you're seeing it in the crypto market a little bit. And we'll see what kind of resolution we come to here in the next couple of weeks. But this is par for the course. All this stuff is predictable. Don't know how it's going to work out, but the fear mongering and the uncertainty is absolutely predictable. We knew they were going to do this, so like he talked about, any retracement in price is an opportunity in the Bitcoin and crypto markets long term.
Yeah. Oh, after learning how to look at charts, and meaning not just staring at the screen, but actually looking at charts and understanding, or starting to factor in the fundamental, irrefutable fact that trading is all, or financial markets, the people that participate in them in some capacity, it's all driven by emotion. Okay, so what you see here is people's emotions playing out on the screen, and they're voting, or they're broadcasting or telegraphing. Is it Cliff, the Cliff High guy from
Yeah, Cliff,
Twitter?
my guy, Cliff High. If you guys want to,
Your
if
dude.
you want to follow somebody who's out there, but actually very,
Ooh.
very good at some of this predictive stuff, Cliff High is a great follow. Now he's out there, but he's good.
He is. I mean, he's right up our alley here, quite frankly. But where I was going with this is that Cliff High, I think he, take this with a grain of salt. This requires some fact checking and noting, but he's intelligent on another level, from what I can tell. And he was involved early days in the large language model thing that we know that is the basis for what we call AI
Yeah.
today. These chat GPT-ish things where you can prompt it to give you answers to questions, or you can ask it to do things, or whatever. Where I'm going with this is that he talked openly in this video where he mentioned the thing about the LLM, the large language model, and that his research and understanding of that helped him watch what people were saying. And specifically, he called out there was something that Brian Moynihan from Bank of America went on the record in the media saying that 18 months later played out, or 18 months later, a prediction that Cliff High made from that statement, or those set of statements, played out, because human beings are, and myself included, so I'm not trying to sound like I'm special here, but he said human beings are always broadcasting or telegraphing what they're thinking and feeling and what they're afraid of. And what I'm trying to make the analogy here is that in financial markets, in crypto markets, stocks, bonds, gold, whatever, people are projecting or telegraphing what their beliefs are, and the things that they're afraid of, or the things that they are not afraid of, by way of the price action, is a reflection of that behavior. And the behavior is at the scale that we can't really comprehend, much less stop. But what I'm trying to communicate is simply this boom bust cycle in the news, where crisis event, resolution, crisis event. This is the cycle. It's the oscillating, the ping pong effect. It's Tron, or Pong, I should say, not Tron, Pong, where we're going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and this will always be. It always has been. Where I'm going with this is that this debt ceiling debate debacle thing gives both parties, both sides, the opportunity to push on the other one to meet the needs that they have. And I'm talking about politically, how it affects where they are in their term of office. Biden's got to come at it from one angle. The other side has to come at it from a different angle, and they're going to keep testing and throwing things at each other until finally they get to the point where there's no time left to do this, and they're going to capitulate, or they're going to be seen to concede on certain things so that it looks like they all came together and had this kumbaya moment at the very end. And how does some nobody like me know all this? Only because I've seen it play out over more than a decade. Okay, this happens again and again and again and again. And it's great theatrics. It's great for business, because when people are afraid and uncertain, what do? They spend money, they buy things, and it's good for the local economy, or short term, it's good for economic activity domestically. Okay, there's my doo-doo cloud, rain cloud thing over the discussion today, but that's just what I think.
Yeah, long term though, whatever they come to today won't be good for the American people. They're gonna most likely raise the debt ceiling and debase our dollars further. I mean, they've shown no will to stop doing that, and no ability. What they need to do is quit spending, but there's absolutely no desire for that. And so,
oh man, the constituents there would be an uprising.
Well, we're all crack addicts, right? We just need the next hit of liquidity into the markets, right? That's what everybody wants, right? That's how this whole thing works. But I think what we want to talk about today is, because of everything going on, and all the problems we're encountering with the banks, and the dollar, inflation, interest rates, I think you're going to start to see in the 2024 election where Bitcoin and crypto become an issue in the 2024 presidential debate. Now, for us, it's a single issue, right? The only thing I care about as a voter is the new administration's stance on cryptocurrency. That's me. I'm a single issue voter. I think a lot of people are going to vote that way in 2024, only because Bitcoin and crypto are going to continue to grow and gain adoption as an alternative to a failing system. So what you had happen at the Bitcoin conference in Miami is proof of that, in the sense you had two potential next presidents of the United States in Robert Kennedy Jr. coming out and saying in support of Bitcoin. He said, I will defend the right and self-custody of Bitcoin. And there's a lot of videos he's had talking about where Bitcoin is better than fiat. This is interesting, right? Because this is something that hasn't really happened yet on a main stage. We also had Vivek Ramaswamy come out and support Bitcoin, and basically what he said was that if you support me, I will make this an issue in the 2024 election. And his approach was a little bit different from RFK, and I think Vivek thinks that he can somehow fix the current system, and that's what he talked about at the Bitcoin conference. To me, I don't know that that's the answer, but irregardless of that, what you have is two candidates in support of Bitcoin and crypto, which is in direct contrast to the current administration that has taken an anti-crypto stance.
Yeah, interesting that the current administration, or the elements in the current administration who are funded by the traditional finance banking lobby, mostly like the Warrens and the Shermans of the world. It's interesting, or I say it's interesting. What I should be saying is it shouldn't shock anyone that someone who's funded by the traditional finance model of the way of doing business, who are very smart people, they understand the pathways to their revenues are being disrupted, and which is natural in the course of history. There's always disruption in business, and there's always somebody who doesn't like it and will fight. I mean,
well, competition. That's competition. That's a free market. That's the way this all works, or supposed to work anyway.
It's supposed to work that way, yes, but it's not going to stop people from playing dirty. And it's like, oh, it's just business. Don't take it personally, Ted. Yeah, well, I mean, it's hard not to take it personally when something that is legal, meaning we're we want to buy Bitcoin, or we want to transact with each other freely as a free society, like we used to be able to do when we did so in paper dollars. And there's been this digitization of the US dollar and this move to transacting with one another through all of these intermediaries and leaving this long paper trail. And it's really, really easy because human beings have a hard time thinking about things, in bigger chunks than, say this size, for example. And the path of least resistance from the one side is that, oh, well, if you're not transacting through a bank using a credit card or a wire transfer, then you're probably doing something illegal. And oh, by the way, you're a money laundering terrorist if you do so, and you hate America. But
you're a threat to democracy.
You're a threat to democracy by living freely in a society and transacting with people as you see fit, as a free, upright, walking, red-blooded American citizen, or someone who came to the United States legally to be here and participate in our economy and our society and all of the things that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. But here we are. There's all of this financial surveillance. But the surveillance part is not the most important part. It's that the current financial system makes money on both sides of the transaction, and they chip away at little bits. You got small businesses bear the brunt of this, quite frankly. They have to pay credit card processing fees. They have to compete for capital. They have to compete for business. They don't have these huge lines of credit. They can't undercut on price. I mean, golly, America's supposed to be about, the underdog and small business, Main Street America, blah, blah, blah. But here we are having to compete with major corporations as small businesses. And we don't have the same resources, and the rules don't apply. The same rules don't translate over.
Well, what you've had happen is you've had, a small group of companies, become uber successful, and what they've done is they've essentially merged with the state, right? And I find it ironic that my definition of fascism includes that, right? A public-private partnership, or not a partnership, but a merger of state and corporations. So what they're doing is the government's using these tech companies to censor people, right, and backdoor policies that they couldn't pass legislatively. And you're going, all right, well, this isn't cool. I don't like this. And they're doing the same thing with the banks, right? And so what you've got here is an interesting conversation in this next election, in the sense that you're going to have candidates that want to continue the status quo, and you're going to have candidates that want to stop, or say they want to stop it. I don't trust these guys are actually going to do anything different once they get in there.
Same.
Because but what the important thing is that this small space has grown to a level that is being talked about on the presidential campaign level, and I think that's huge. I think that's important, and it's only going to become more important. I think what you have to look at is, fundamentally, do you want more government or less government in your life? And I think most people would say less government, right? But you have to really look at this and say, okay, I'm not a Democrat or a Republican, but there certainly seems to be one side of the aisle that is pro-censorship, pro-restrictions, anti-crypto, and that seems to be the left. And the left has continually gotten more and more, far, far left, to the sense that, there's stories about the young staffers in the White House are saying, with this debt ceiling, that they're not willing to negotiate because they believe the media will bring the Republicans. And I ask you, how is that good for any of us? Because you've got a clear one-sided media, a clear, one side of the aisle wants restrictions, wants control, and that's what it's about. Don't get it twisted. I mean, it's all about control. These people are angling for power and control over us, and Bitcoin is in stance opposition to that. And that's why it's so important, because it lets individuals retain control over their own financial sovereignty. And if you think for 1 second these people that are currently searching for power like that, you're kidding yourself.
Agree. Another interesting silver lining the more I thought about what an uphill battle it's going to be for both of these candidates, given the fact that they've made it public that they have this particular stance, which I don't want to sound like a doomsday or a negative Nancy here, but it basically like rules them out of having a shot, in my opinion. This is just my opinion, okay? But the silver lining is that as a result of getting, and I appreciate and I admire the sacrifice here, quite frankly. They're basically, in the way I look at it, they're sacrificing any chance of becoming president that they have to bring this issue to the level, the presidential level of media coverage. And here's where I'm going with this. How sweet it's going to be when all these mainstream media outlets have no choice but to cover this topic in the mainstream above other things that they would rather do because they don't like the fact that Bitcoin and crypto is now a presidential campaign level item that requires to be covered. Just like when CNN had Trump on the town hall, and the reactions from their own people afterward, it was glorious, quite frankly. I don't like CNN, by the way. I won't watch it. I block it on my browser.
Well,
I have it as a blocked URL.
A lot of these places have that. Well, traditional mainstream media has lost trust because they've continued to lie and report things that aren't true for many years, right? And it's very simple the way that works. These companies are all owned. All these mainstream media stations are owned by the same companies who have a political agenda, and that political agenda is merged with the state. Okay, and so you're not going to get the real story on these places. It just doesn't happen anymore, which is unfortunate and sad. But it's led to the growth of alternative media, and now we have alternative currency, right? And so this is a natural reaction to, what's looking to be a more and more totalitarian system. Right, you're going to have pushback. You're going to have stuff come out against it, and I think it's important to recognize that while we watch this happen, this is stuff that's going to happen regardless of whatever policies they want to enact. Bitcoin's going to continue to operate. They can get up there and talk about it. They can get up there and rip it. It won't matter. More and more people are learning about it every day. And deciding that it's a better system than the current system, which quite frankly only benefits those at the top and closest to the money printer. Yes, in America today and in the rest of the world, you can still create a business and you can still do very well for yourself. But as we're starting to see, especially in the post-pandemic era, it's becoming more increasingly difficult. And it's difficult because a lot of the restrictions that they implied during the pandemic have continued to carry forward. Anything that these guys place on us, there's a great line, I forget what it is, but it's like, if a government imposes something, they're not going to give it up, you're going to have to take it back, right? There's no, they're not giving up power anytime soon. And I think that's why you see some of these politicians dislike it. And I think it's a good metric on kind of how to look at these politicians. If they're anti-crypto, they're anti-freedom and they're anti-American. And I think that's how it has to be framed, right? Because that's very simple to understand. They want to control your money. Now, with the current fiat system, they can get by, doing it in the background through inflation, rising interest rates, debasement of the money. But with Bitcoin, it's a lot harder for them unless they want to come out and actually say it, which they won't. But here's what they actually mean. We don't like Bitcoin because we can't control you when you use it. They'll never actually say that, but when they say they don't like Bitcoin, that's exactly what they mean.
It's just like who was it that signed the executive order to seize all gold? You had to turn your gold in or else you were a criminal.
Yep.
People had the money. Gold was the money, okay? And people had it all over the place, and they weren't reliant on centralized government for their needs. And what are you going to do when you're a government entity and you want to impose, some new rule or regulation on someone who's self-sufficient? They have their own money, they have their own food. This is an interesting thing to think about back in, the late 1800s, early 1900s, when people were largely self-sufficient entities, their families. They had their own labor force. They had 15 kids at one shot, and so they had their own labor pool. They had their own food. They knew how to get water. They sowed crops, raised livestock. They ran society at the micro level here, and these towns and communities popped up, and they all worked together. There was a symbiotic relationship, and they traded. The monetary unit was gold for a long time until it was able to be put into the bank, and you could get paper notes to trade. To the currency part here. What I'm trying to get at is that how do you go to a society like that and try to tell them what they can and can't do? They'll tell you to,
pound sand.
Yeah, I'll tell you to pound. I couldn't think of it. Thank you. They'll tell you to pound sand, and they were armed. So what are you going to do? And so crazy people in government are like, well, wait a minute. If we take away the ability for them to hold their own money, then we can start doing these things. And that's exactly what I think is that's what happened. They seized the gold, made it illegal until they could be the one that was issuing it or making the rules around how individuals could own it. And anyway, I mean, just look at history and get over yourself and thinking that things are going to somehow be different this time, but they're not. You look at all the societies that were disarmed, and then look at the dictators that followed, and look at all the people that suffered and died as a result of it. And
yeah, we got to look at these candidates, and I think it'll be interesting to watch what happens to RFK, who is running as a Democrat and is a Democrat. Watch what the Democratic Party does to him. I mean, they're not even going to let him debate. And on the flip side too, on the Republican side, it appears to be there is support for crypto. I don't mean to be one-sided on both sides of the aisle. Okay, now what that support translates into, I don't know. There's a lot of goodwill to be gained by just saying, yes, I like Bitcoin and crypto and I support it. What they'll actually do, I have no idea. But the main thing is to remember that this issue is now political. Okay, this is in Congress, this is in the House and the Senate. They can't ignore it anymore, which is a good thing. It's just another step on the way. And we've known this for, having been in the space for 6-7 years now, we knew we would come across this battle. The final boss, right? The final boss is the central banks and these government structures that, what they should be doing is embracing Bitcoin and crypto. If they were truly pro-people, pro-freedom governments, they would be doing that. But what you see them doing is the exact opposite right now. Now, that can change, right? And a lot of it is they want to be able to control it. They want to be able to control Bitcoin. They want to get their hands around it. They want to make it hard for people to leave the existing system. But what they fail to understand is because of the internet, this is already happening. This is going to happen on a global level against every government. And you're going to see people start to travel and leave. And again, this is throwing my tinfoil hat here. In 2017 and 2018, the internet was allowing people to travel freely, move around, live in all parts of the world. And, you had uprisings in China in 2019, and all of a sudden there's a pandemic and all of that is killed. When was the last time you heard about the uprising in China versus, the CCP? When was the last time you even heard about that? But if you'll remember, right before COVID happened, right before the pandemic, it was coming to be a big deal. People were embracing these ideas, and what happened? The world shut down. Okay, and if let's just say that all of that was just a coincidence. What a coincidence! What a timely coincidence for power structures in the current system. Okay, that being said, you have to remember that this stuff is still going to happen anyway. All you're seeing right now is you're seeing a dying nation state system across the entire planet grasping at straws to try to survive. They could slow this down. They could make this last 5-10 years longer than it should. But there's a world of unintended consequences, because what happened during the pandemic? People realized that they could work and live from home. And the next step is, if I can work and live from home, I can work and live anywhere. I can generate an income from anywhere. So why would I stay in a state that's oppressive? Or why would I stay in a country that's oppressive? There's a lot of beautiful places to live in the world, right? And so, what they're going to start doing, and we're going to start seeing, is these states, let's just stick to the United States, that become totalitarian and oppressive and restrictive. People are fleeing to states that aren't. And the states that aren't happen to be red states today. This could all change. I mean, I think this is all very fluid, and you're going to start to see states like Texas turn purple, unfortunately, But, all this stuff is it's irrelevant long term, because people will find ways to be self-sovereign and free individuals. Now, I look at all the people going to El Salvador right now, and I say that's great. I think that's amazing. I think, what El Salvador is doing is amazing. I think it's smart. I think that's the way you generate talent and business to your country. And I think you could take that to a state level and look at what Texas is doing, what Tennessee is doing, what Florida is doing. Is, you want to incentivize people to come and live and not be in a situation where they're taxed 50% of their money. They've got these ideological things that the government is pressing on people, through corporations now, that people are just saying, you know what, I don't agree with that. I don't want anything to do with it. I'm not going to buy the product. Same thing. You could have the same thing happen with states and countries. You know what? I no longer believe in what this country represents. I'm out, right? And Bitcoin gives you the ability to do that.
That's right. So short term, the thing that's missing right now that I'm picking up on, this is not an original thought. All right. I'm just making observation, is that there's a bit of a sense of direction missing in short-term price action is what I'm talking about here. So it may be that, given some of the lack of direction and this awkward state that we're in with the Federal Reserve and what they've been talking about, oh, we have to keep raising rates. But that's one element and one variable in the equation, and you have all these other things globally, like the bond markets, all the other pieces of the financial system, the banking apparati that are being horribly affected by this. And there's a lot of really big moving parts here. What I'm trying to get down to is that none of those things change the base case for Bitcoin. It also doesn't change the fact that currency debasement is absolutely necessary to be able to fund or refinance the national debt. And that is going to happen. It is not, I don't like to speak in absolutes as often as I can not do that. But what I'm trying to communicate here, and this is not my idea, just listen to what Raoul Pal says and the Mike Powell from Cross Border Capital talk about, is the rolling of the debt has to continue. All of this stuff we're hearing in the short term is just noise, and it's misdirection and it's theater, because it keeps the constituents, it keeps the sheeple, which we're I'm a part of the sheeple. Okay, I'm not judging. I'm just saying, I'm a nobody citizen land. I don't hold government office. I haven't. I've not wielded legislation and, driven people to the promised land and all this other stuff politically. Okay. What I'm trying to communicate is that the financing apparatus for the national debt will roll. They will roll the debt. They'll refinance at whatever rate to facilitate the spending that is allegedly on the chopping block here. It's not going to get chopped. Entitlements aren't going anywhere. There are way too many boomers, no judgment. I'll be a boomer someday, from an age perspective. The point is that there are a statistically significant number of boomers that have Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, pensions, the entitlement group. And if you're a politician, you have to be really, really careful. Seen this again and again and again since I've been paying attention, is the minute you start talking about cutting people's entitlements, all of a sudden people wake up and they're like, okay, I'm a political analyst now. And the the politicians in these areas start to hear it. Florida is a great example of this. It's a statistically significant number of retirees who are counting on entitlements. I mean, they worked their whole life. They drank the Kool-Aid. They participated in the system. I'm going to do this because when I retire, I'm going to be set. I won't have to, I can float off into my golden years and not have to participate in the labor pool. And you start threatening that, there's still way too many boomers, and they will move the vote if they need to. And I think that this hyperbole and jaw flapping short term about like cutting. I mean, I agree with what you say, Josh. The spending is the problem, but it's not going to stop. The debt is going to roll. The cash that will end up in the system will be printed out of thin air. Our purchasing power will be debased no matter what Bitcoin's price is today. It has pulled back from 31,000 to a humble and a most humbling, 26? Oh my gosh, we're back to 26,695. Okay, so $26,000 for a Bitcoin. Okay. Point is that short term, the price may retrace a little bit. Okay. But the fundamentals, I'll just keep saying this again and again, the fundamental drivers here are the debt-based system is the way of the world. Japan set this in motion. They're the model. The Chinese central bank is learning from Japan. The U.S. central bank is the other big fish in the sea. And then the Europeans, which with the euro and all that calamity, not really a big deal. But what I'm talking about is the debt roll is going to happen, whether we like it or not. Nobody is going to stop that. Currency debasement will continue. The spending will continue, and the national debt will grow. Period. Like, you can set your watch to those things, in my opinion. No, maybe I'm wrong.
No, there's no incentive for them to stop. There's nothing stopping them from doing it, right? And like you talk about, the boomer generation, they're interesting because, you look at the majority of control in Congress and the Senate and the White House are boomers, so, until we get younger people in positions of power, none of this is going to change. And it's very frustrating to watch, is somebody who's a millennial and has an understanding of all of this and the way it's transpired over the last 20 or 30 years. Here's the solution. Take a percentage of what you have, opt out, buy Bitcoin, learn about this stuff. Don't let all this stuff kind of worry you. We're going to get to a point where a lot of things are happening financially. There's a lot of changes happening. There's a lot of people coming out against and for these changes. But mostly what you see in politics is theater. It doesn't change any, like Ted said, it changes nothing with how the blockchain works and how Bitcoin works. It's, the only thing that I can think of with all of this is if they make a big enough deal out of one of these things and the market wants to react negatively, it's an opportunity to buy more, because the long-term path of Bitcoin has been unchanged and will continue to be unchanged by any of this. And so that's the way I look at it, and I think that's a good way to frame it. I think it's cool that it's reached this level. I think this was an inevitability, and the fact that it's got here so quick is a testament to the fact that this is a better option, for people to store their wealth. We can talk about better options as a payment system or global reserve currency. I think some of those ideas are kind of far-fetched, at least for the time being. I think you could have in the future a basket of currencies and commodities, Bitcoin included, to back up a nation state issued fiat currency. But I think we're a long way away from that. The idea that these nation states are gonna that everybody's gonna use Bitcoin as a reserve currency, I think is laughable today. In 10 years, it might be different. Yeah, 10 years that might be different. They're gonna try gold. They're gonna try CBDCs. They're gonna try everything they've already tried, and then some other stupid stuff, and none of it'll work. And so like I said, I always say they'll do everything wrong first, and then we'll be here waiting when they finally come to the conclusion that we've come to. But I think for today, that's a good place to wrap it up. Cool that they're talking about this. This is amazing. It's reached this level. Ted, I'll give you the last word here, and then we'll wrap it up.
Here's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for all of the enemies, or all of the overt, verbose enemies of crypto and Bitcoin and crypto today, like the JP Morgans and whatever. I wait and I hunger for the day when they inevitably have to flip bias because their business will suddenly be dependent on it in some way, like meaning their customers, like the people that fund their operation. When their bias, when they have to flip and they start talking about it like they were proponents all along and it was their idea that everybody should be involved in this. That's what I'm waiting for. That's coming, in my opinion. You've seen it. Bank of America, very, very anti-crypto stance a few years back. Earlier this year, what's one of the largest single holders of MicroStrategy stock was who?
Bank of America.
Bank of America. Oh my goodness. A proxy for Bitcoin. We're laying right, because what matters is what the market is doing. And the market was saying, we believe in this, and they are putting their money to work in the single best proxy for Bitcoin, which is MicroStrategy stock. I'm not telling you to buy it. I'm telling you, you should look at it and do your own diligence and make your own decision about whether or not, if you're not willing to hold spot Bitcoin in your Bitcoin wallet, the next best thing is to buy MicroStrategy stock. And if you look at MicroStrategy's stock performance since they started on their Bitcoin journey in 2020, and you look at everything else, how it's performed relative to MicroStrategy stock, it makes you sick.
Yeah,
So,
and I'm a proponent of that for corporations and big money if they want access to Bitcoin. I think the individuals should own Bitcoin directly, as I know you are too.
Yeah. Individual. There's no reason why, if you can wake up, like if you wake up in the morning and you can stand in front of the mirror and there's fog on it, then you have everything that you need cognitively and mentally to be a Bitcoin holder. Like take possession of it, like everyone else. It's not that difficult, no matter what anyone tells you. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Nope. So we'll wrap it up there for today. I think the long term, what we really need to happen in the United States is to get an administration in there that will allow a regulatory framework that's not psychotic like what the current administration's SEC is trying to do. And basically what needs to happen is the government just needs to get out of the way. Give us the rules and then get out of the way. It's not the government's job to decide what technologies win or lose. It doesn't work that way. Never has. Every time they try to do it, it fails miserably. So this stuff is important to pay attention to because it does matter to a certain extent. But Bitcoin fundamentals won't change because of this, and we will continue to press on every single day. With that, we'll wrap it up for the day. We got Ted's head on the disclaimer today, so I was riding solo on this, so now we got Ted here. But yeah, anything we say is not financial advice. It's not legal advice or accounting advice. This is for information and educational purposes.